interesting. Special effects are fantastic. Special effects and cinematography blend together to make some beautiful imagery of people next to monsters. There are some freaking great scenes, and it's freaking fantastic. That's why I liked Godzilla 2014 so much, because they did have scenes, a lot of scenes really, where the humans are next to monsters. You get the size and the scope of these freaking creatures, and you realize just how amazing this scenario is and how awesome it would be in real life. Well, not awesome, terrifying, but you get what I'm saying. You feel the terror and the power of the scene. And Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, or GMK, as I'm awfully going to call it, has a lot of that. Like the scene where Godzilla is stomping on the people when he first wakes up. The scene where Godzilla looks over the freaking mountainside, and people look up and just see this freaking, basically, they call him the God of Destruction in the movie. The God of Destruction looks down at them from the mountaintop, him looming over it in a very horrifying fashion. And then what does he do? He starts knocking chunks of the freaking mountain on top of them. It's a terrifying and powerful scene. And there are many other like it involving monsters like Mothra, Baragon, and King Ghidorah. These scenes help to bring out the size of these monsters. It helps to, because the number one thing you'll hear about a person who's not a Godzilla fan who criticizes these movies will say, it's just a bunch of guys in rubber suits smashing around a play town Tokyo. And you know what? Scenes like this help, as we all know the cinematic term for it, the spirit of disbelief, it's greatly enhanced when you take the time to put these monsters next to people. I'm not criticizing the Godzilla franchise as a whole. For a long time, they did not have the technology to do that, or didn't have the budget. So it was acceptable that they didn't do that, or they did in their own ways. In creative ways, like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah had great scenes of Godzilla next to people, namely Shindo, and in movies like Godzilla vs. Destroyer also strive to have that, basically with scenes of Mickey next to the dying Godzilla Jr., and Godzilla 1984 also had a few scenes of, Godzilla's feet next to people fleeing. Those are great attempts to bring Godzilla into the world of reality, and it works fantastically well. And this is a fact that this is something that the Godzilla movies after GMK somehow missed. And that includes the Kiru films, which I kind of like. I love Tokyo SOS, but it missed this point very badly. There's not a single shot of Godzilla next to people in Tokyo SOS, which is kind of a big problem. The movie overall is still very good. It's still, to me, one of my top 10 Godzilla movies, but it is missing that detail. And Godzilla Final Wars as well also missed the Godzilla human contact. It does not really happen until the very end, where Manila gets in the way to save the people, blah, blah, blah. I already did a Godzilla Final Wars section. You can check that out. But yeah, to me, that's one of the main highlights of this movie. They strive to make it a modern movie, and it works to its advantage very freaking well. And really, to me, there's no excuse anymore, because already in 1999 with Gamera, Revenge of Iris, or Awakening of Iris, they were already putting monsters next to people, and it looked freaking fantastic. Which means I probably need to do a Gamera dissection soon, with a new movie coming out in 2015, supposedly. They already had technology to start putting monsters next to people. Other movies just didn't want to do it for whatever reason. So when you get movies like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in 2002, where Godzilla almost never interacts with a human cast, it's a bad thing to me. Like, you have the power to do it, make it happen. It strikes the audience as much more personal filmmaking instead of by the numbers. Having a monster rampage with no human contact, except for afterwards humans bitching that their city got destroyed. You need to have the people there when it's happening. And that's what GMK excels at. But moving off that long rant, what needs to be done with the future of the franchise, and what I'm pretty sure will be done, they've already been doing it. Now let's move on to the monsters. Godzilla himself. I already talked about what he is, embodiment of pure evil and pain and tragedy. What about looks? GMK Godzilla looks very different from all the other Millennium incarnations. Mostly in the fact that he looks a lot like the original 1954 version and the Heisei era, but mainly he looks a lot like the 1954 version, but only because of his body build. The head is very different. It lacks the mammal-like ears that the Heisei era had. It has pure white, pupilless eyes, which kind of showcases the fact that he's a demon, incarnate, which is very different. No other Godzilla movie's ever done that since or before, and it looks fantastic. And of course, he has a very small pinhead, even smaller head in comparison to the Heisei era, which that's probably where they got that from. The Godzilla build is bulky, including very large feet, but it works for this monster. It works very well, especially since he was basically the main villain. I mean, no one could stop this guy, this version of Godzilla. He's amazing. It was incredible to watch. The spines definitely lack that jagged crystal rock look that the 2000s era was famous for. Not that I don't mind that. I mean, here to me the spines look fine, and of course the claws look fantastic and the long tapering tail. There's some great shots of this version of Godzilla, and he really is terrifying. The music by Kootoni definitely helps, but cinematography itself was just great. There are a lot of scenes where Godzilla shows off his terror, and you feel like you want to shit yourself in a lot of these scenes where Godzilla's walking past, windows and people are inside, terrified, and just great, great. What On the topic, there's also a very funny scene in the beginning of the movie where they made it was so awesome. I love this movie. They made a reference to Godzilla 1998, also known as the Gino Roland Emmerich film. And apparently, in the universe of GMK, the 1998 film did in fact happen, where Americans actually mistake they made a mistake in saying that Gino was Godzilla when he attacked New York, and that was to me that was a great little nod at the American version that happened, which is freaking hilarious. Of course, GF Final Wars would take it even further by having Godzilla actually kill Gino, but at the time though, this was the peak of it. It was great. It was great, and compared to the level of mutilation that happens in this movie to the human race, it really doesn't make you wonder what went wrong with the 1998 movie, when the fact that very few on-screen deaths other than military. This movie makes you feel, like I said in my review long ago, my Godzillathon review, this movie makes you feel the terror of what it means to be in this monster situation. People are constantly getting hurt, civilians and military alike. It's awful. It's basically a war. And that's something that also a lot of Godzilla movies skip over, including the Millennium movies. A lot of them do this, although some still try to convey that, although not in as dark manner as this one. And once again, I think Godzilla 2014 did very well. It's a city getting crushed, or people going to get hurt, and you see that before and after the fight and during. That was great. Moving on. I should say this right now. A lot of the monsters in this movie are smaller and kind of weaker than the usual incarnations because of the theme they're going for with overpowering Godzilla, which attracts some criticism from people, but to me, to tell the story, why not change it? Why not change it? Of course, people know the true background of the story. This made a lot more sense with the original monster cast when it was going to be Godzilla versus Anguirus, Varan, and Baragon. But of course, Toho, knowing the risks that they take with new monsters like Biollante and Megaguirus, they knew it might not be financially successful, so they changed Varan and Anguirus into King Ghidorah and Mothra. And to me, it made a lot of sense for them business-wise. Why not? And probably would make for a more interesting fight, obviously. So moving that aside, this version of Mothra looks fantastic. Oh, it definitely looks more wasp-like, I should say. More butterfly. Yeah, it looks more wasp or hornet-like. It even has a stinger kind of like one. But this version of Mothra looks fantastic. Like I said, a lot smaller than Mothra usually is compared to Godzilla, but for the style of the story, it makes sense. This version of Mothra is not as elegant looking to me as the Tokyo SOS version of Mothra, which to me is like the best version of Mothra ever, as far as matching the insect look with also some elegant style to it. But this Mothra is still, nonetheless, very freaking good. I love this version. It looks fantastic. King Ghidorah. I do love they used the classic roars, although slightly modified, but the attempt was clear to recreate the original King Ghidorah. This is kind of a problem for most people because King Ghidorah is usually much bigger than Godzilla, and here King Ghidorah is barely around the same size. And for the majority of the movie, King Ghidorah does not have the same magnificent wings, but of course, it's explained later on. King Ghidorah gets the power up from Mothra, yada yada yada. But over how does King Ghidorah look? To me, King Ghidorah looks cool. I definitely like this version, especially the one with the old like deer, like antler, like looking horns on the head. This King Ghidorah to me is not my favorite version. To me, there are a lot better looking versions. Even the Heisei King Ghidorah to me looks a little better than this one. And Grand King Ghidorah from Rebirth of Moth 3, while a shitty movie, they had the best looking rendition of King Ghidorah by far. So therefore, this King Ghidorah doesn't really compare, but it's for the purpose of this movie. Like I said, still looks very good, and King Ghidorah had some great shots in this. And we come to Baragon. Baragon, a monster who had been used and abused over the years, from having basically a cameo role in Destroy All Monsters. He was removed entirely from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla in favor of Anger's for whatever reason, and then he wouldn't appear any time of the Heisei era at all. Baragon was basically a dead character until they brought Baragon back for this movie. Uh, Definitely a better looking version of the Showa version. Not that criticizing that was still a pretty good version, but this version looks freaking fantastic. And the thing I like to bring up about this movie, special effects, they pay attention to detail. The animatronics in this Godzilla movie are fantastic. Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Baragon, they all can blink. They all can snarl like wolves, bare their teeth. You see the gums. It's fantastic. It makes it feel more realistic. And it's freaking amazing. The scenes of Baragon in the cave, in the tunnel, Baragon fighting Godzilla, these are all great scenes that look fantastic. And they look like real giant animals. Baragon doesn't get the little heat ray that he had in the 60s film, Frankenstein Conquers the World, if you don't know. But the fights with Baragon are still very entertaining. Which leads me to the special effects and the fight scenes in the movie. They're freaking some of the best the series has ever seen. And to me, they're still waiting to get freaking triumphed. The scenes in Godzilla Tokyo SOS and Final Wars, and even Godzilla vs. the Mutos in a new movie, those are all great fights. Well, not Final Wars really, but Tokyo SOS and Godzilla 2014 has some great fight scenes. They still didn't have anything close to the level of detail and long, long bloody fights that we got to see in GMK. I'm talking about Godzilla vs. Baragon, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah and Mothra, Godzilla vs. Military. A whole lot of stuff happens, and Godzilla just the unrivaled badass who just takes them all on. It's incredible. I can't gush about these fight scenes enough. They're fantastic. They're freaking excellent, and every Godzilla movie could take a few notes while watching it. Including, once again, the attention to detail. People do get hurt during monster fights. So we see civilians and soldiers alike taking blows inadvertently from even Baragon and Mothra. Because that's just what happens when two giant freaking creatures fight in a populated city. That's what happens. And then, of course, I should definitely mention Shinji Higuchi, who's directing the new Godzilla movie. He's the man who did special effects for GMK as well as the Heisei Gamera films, and of course he directed the special effects for the new Attack on Titan movies. So, like I've been saying pretty much the whole review, special effects in the movie are fantastic, freaking great. You don't want to miss out any of the action scenes in this movie. If for nothing else, watch the movie for the action. Freaking fantastic. And before I leave out anything else, the score by Kawatoni is fantastic. He already did a fantastic score for the 90s Gamera movies, and then here we definitely hear him being a lot more electronic with it, but it still has a lot of emotion to it. It has terror, it has heroism, it has a nice mythical feel to it. It feels a lot more fantasy-like than a lot of Godzilla movie scores, and it worked beautifully. Kawatoni did an amazing score for GMK. Enough said. So for this movie, I'm definitely giving it a 10 out of 10. Every Godzilla